On the morning of the biggest wedding this village had ever seen, the bride had already been buried for 3 days. The drums were playing. The women were singing. Children were scattering petals across the red earth like nothing in the world was wrong. And right there, at the center of all of it, stood a woman in white, smiling, beautiful, but dead. So the question isn't whether something went wrong that morning. The question is, who made it go wrong? And what happened to them when the spirits found out? 'Cause they always find out. You need to understand Adanna before you can understand any of this. Not just what she looked like, though people said even the river paused when she walked past it. You need to understand what she meant to this village. She was the kind of person who made you feel like the most important person in the room just by looking at you. The kind of woman elders called by name when she passed. Not because they had to, but because they wanted to. The kind of girl that children followed without being asked, and young men straightened their backs for without realizing it. Her name meant father's daughter. And she lived up to every syllable. The one thing, the only thing, Adanna wanted in this world was to marry Obinna, the chief's son. Her person since childhood. Since bare feet on red earth and stolen mangoes and lying in the long grass counting stars until the dew drove them inside. By the time they were old enough to call it love, they had already been living it for years. When Obinna came to her father with kola nut and palm wine, the old man didn't hesitate for a single second. He drank. He called the neighbors. He wept. The whole village celebrated for 2 days straight. The chief himself laughed, which people said almost never happened. The drums played from before dawn until the fires burned low. It was the kind of celebration that makes you believe everything is going to be fine. It wasn't. Because at the back of that celebration, very still, very quiet, in a way that should have worried someone, stood Amaka. She was beautiful, sharp-featured, composed. And she was watching Adanna the way you watch something you've decided you're going to destroy. She had loved Obinna for years. Silently. Completely. Desperately. She had told herself to be patient. She had told herself her time was coming. And now she was watching another woman receive everything she had been waiting for. Something inside Amaka didn't just break. Turned. 3 days before the wedding, Adanna woke up wrong. No cough, no wound, no pain she could name. She just sat at breakfast and stared at her food like something was pulling her attention down into a place no one else could reach. By noon the fever had her. Came fast. Came mean. The kind of heat that soaks through cloth and radiates off skin like a fire burning from inside. The village healers came running. They burned herbs that had never failed. They prayed. They chanted over her body through the night. Nothing worked. The fever climbed. Obinna refused to leave the door. Refused food. Refused comfort. Just sat with his forehead pressed against the wood and talked to her through the wall in a voice too small for anyone else to hear. It didn't matter. At midnight on the second day, Dana died. The sound her mother made when she understood. That sound carried. 3 compounds away. People heard it and knew without being told what it meant. She was wrapped in white and buried before sunrise. Because the elders said death should not linger near a place prepared for celebration. The wedding was dismantled. Flower petals swept away. Drums silenced. Umuof didn't just grieve. It went dark. And then, the very next night, someone knocked on her mother's door. 3 times. The mother hadn't slept. She had sat beside that door all night without knowing why. She placed one shaking hand on the wood. She opened it, and there she was, alive, or something close enough to it that no one stopped to ask the difference. But here's what nobody thought to ask, and this is the part that changes everything. Why did she come back? Let me tell you what really happened. When the poison hit Adanna's blood, and yes, it was poison, she didn't just lie down and accept it. She crawled, hands and knees, through the dark, through the sharp grass. Down the slope the children were forbidden to descend alone. All the way to the bank of the sacred river. Now, before I go further, I need you to understand something about this river. It is not just water. The elders say it has been flowing since before the village had a name. that it remembers every secret ever whispered at its bank, every promise ever made above its surface, every person ever given to its current. The spirit that lives in its depth does not interfere with the affairs of the living. She watches, she collects, she balances, but she can be called. And Adanna called her. The water stopped moving. Every current, every ripple. And from the deep center where the water goes black, a light rose. Low, green, old as the earth it flows through. The spirit didn't speak with a voice you could hear. She spoke the way deep things speak, directly into the chest, past the ears, past the mind. I cannot undo what was done to you. Death opens in one direction only. But I can hold it, for 7 sunsets. Return to the world above. Finish what your heart cannot release. Adanna said yes before the offer was finished. But hear this. And here the river's warmth vanished completely. When the 7th sunset falls and the spirits come to collect, no living person may stand beside you. The spirits do not count carefully. They take whoever is close. 7 days. Get back to Adanna. Stand beside him on their wedding day. Give him the memory of her smiling, not grieving, not gone. And at the 7th sunset, she would step away from him. She would go alone. She had agreed to this. She had not agreed to what the river already knew was coming. She had not agreed to justice. What happened next, the signs, the warnings, the things that should have made everyone stop, were right there in the open. Nobody wanted to see them. The dogs wouldn't go near her father's compound. Every single one. They'd approach, stop, sniff, and back away with their tails down, whimpering at something their noses understood and their owners refused to. Babies cried when she passed. Not normal crying. A specific airless wailing, the kind that sounds less like hunger or discomfort and more like alarm. And at sunset, this is the one that should have stopped everything cold. Adanna cast no shadow. The long orange light stretched everyone's silhouette across the earth. Everyone's but hers. She never ate. Not once during all the preparation days. She moved food around. She smiled. She spoke. But nothing ever crossed her lips. Her skin was always cold. Always. There was one person in the village who wasn't confused by any of this. Mama Chisholm. The old blind woman who had lived long enough that no one was certain anymore which generation she actually belonged to. She wasn't confused. She was terrified. She found Adanna and grabbed his arm so hard he startled. The girl you love, she said without raising her sightless eyes, is walking on borrowed time. The river holds her. Not love. Not a miracle. The river. He pulled away. He told himself she was old. That grief does strange things. He repeated it until he almost believed it. But that night, standing beside Adanna in the yard, he glanced down at the water basin between them. The full moon made it a perfect mirror. He watched her reflection, and he watched it flicker. Not like a candle, like a signal cutting out, like something on the other side fighting to hold the image together, losing, snapping back. He looked down at her feet. They weren't quite touching the ground. Just barely. Just enough to pass for real. He said nothing. He told himself 3 more times that he had imagined it. He had not imagined it. The wedding morning arrived beautiful. Cruel in its beauty looking back. Clear sky. Warm gold light. The drums before dawn. The smell of palm wine and pepper soup and good wood smoke stretching across the whole village. Children running with ribbons. Women singing loud enough to reach the next hill. And Adanna, when the women finished dressing her and she stepped outside in white and gold and coral, stopped the compound cold. Even the most skeptical person in Umuof had nothing to say in that moment. She was radiant. Whatever she was, alive, borrowed, somewhere the living have no category for, she was magnificent. Adanna saw her across the yard and forgot every fear he'd been carrying. That was the moment the sky changed. Not gradually, all at once. The way it does before something that isn't a storm but moves like one. The light flattened, went heavy, like something had pressed its palm across the face of the sun. The drums stuttered, picked back up, stuttered again. And then during the vows, the wind arrived. Not a breeze. A deliberate wind that moved in a perfect circle around the ceremony and put out every torch it touched. One after another. The sound each one made when it died was exactly like a breath being let go. The river, 100 meters away, could be heard rising against its banks. The guests laughed nervously and looked at the sky. Weather. And then Mama Chisholm stood up. She rose like a woman who had been building to this moment for her entire life. Her sightless eyes turned, directly, unerringly, toward Adanna, and she screamed, "The seventh sunset has come." The celebration died in an instant. Every drum, every voice, every breath. Silence like a wall coming down. Adanna's hands began to shake. The color didn't just leave her face. It evacuated. Completely. Like a vessel with a crack at the base. And when she spoke Obinna's name, her voice carried underneath it another voice. Deeper. Resonant. The echo of something that has passed through the place between breathing and not. She turned to him. In front of everyone. The whole village, the dead torches, the circling wind, the rising river. She told him everything. The cup. Poison. The hand that held it. The river. Pact. The 7 days. The condition. She told him the way a person speaks when they have already accepted their ending and only need one other person to accept it too. Step back, she said. Quiet. Desperate. Please. You cannot be beside me when they come. I go alone. Please, Obinna, step back. He couldn't move. His feet would not carry him away from her. And the spirits were already here. You couldn't see them. But you could feel them the way you feel deep water moving beneath a still surface. That pull, that weight, that knowledge that something far larger than you is present and paying attention. The temperature dropped without warning. Every remaining candle bent to the side. All of them at once, like they were bowing to something passing through. The whispers started at the edges of the crowd and moved inward. No language anyone alive had ever spoken. Ancient. Deliberate. Circling. Adanna grabbed Obinna's hands. Step back, please. Step back right now. The spirits tightened. And then they paused. Something shifted in the invisible current. The way a tracker pauses when the scent changes. The way a river changes direction when it hits something harder than itself. The force moved. Not toward Adanna. Not toward Obinna. Toward the back of the crowd. Toward Amaka. She felt it the instant it found her. You could see it happen. The composure she had worn all morning just collapsed. Her eyes went wide. She took one step backwards, stumbled, and her prayer beads, the ones she had worn through all of it, through every lie, through every careful smile, scattered across the red earth. And the words came out of her. Not because she chose to speak. Because the spirits pulled them out of her the way a thorn is pulled from deep in the flesh. Not gently. Without asking. The poison cup. The morning. Her hands. Her choice. All of it. Every word fell into the silence of the crowd like stones dropped into still water. The ripples went everywhere. And everyone who heard it, every face, every pair of eyes, changed. Amaka screamed. And then she was just gone. No fire. No spectacle. No sound. She was standing there. And then the space where she had been was empty. Her wrapper lay collapsed on the ground. Her scattered beads were still rolling. Slowly in all directions, like they hadn't been told yet that the person who wore them no longer existed in this world. The wind stopped. The river went quiet. The circling ended. Adanna turned to Obinna one last time. She was fading. Not violently. The way a reflection fades when you step away from the water. Steady. And hurried. Like something completing itself. She put her hand against his face. Her touch was cold. Deep water cold. The kind of cold that carries a whole world beneath it. I came back so you'd have this, she said. So you'd remember me standing. Smiling. Choosing you. Not in a white cloth on the ground. Here, on the day we promised each other. He held her hand until there was nothing left to hold. The white cloth settled to the earth like a sigh. Nobody moved for a long time after. No drums. No voices. Even the children stood still. understanding, the way children sometimes do before the world teaches it out of them, that certain moments are not meant to be filled with sound. Mama Chisholm sat back down, pressed her beads to her lips, and closed her eyes. That night they talked about what they had seen, and what they agreed on. What every witness carried home and never forgot, was this. Amaka had everything she needed to live a full life. She had beauty. She had her own story to build. She had time. But jealousy doesn't tell you that. Jealousy tells you that someone else's blessing is your loss. That you cannot be full while another person is fed. That the only way to win is to make sure the other person loses. And it will burn every good thing in your life to the ground, to prove a point that was never true to begin with. Amaka didn't lose Obinna to Adanna. She lost herself, long before the spirits ever came. Obinna never remarried. Not from grief, though the grief was real and it never fully left. But because some loves don't need to last forever to be complete. They just need to be real. The river remembers every name. And it settles every debt. Now you know what jealousy really costs. The question is, do you recognize it before it costs you the same? The spirit of that river kept her word that day. But spirits have long memories. And there was one thing Adanna carried into the water with her. One secret she never told Obinna, that the river is still holding. That story is darker than this one.